It's time for Myth of the Week.
All right, awesome. So I just thought about this. We were sitting there. I was talking to a guy, and we were putting some NPT fittings on. And I was like, "You like to leave your lock rings on or not?" And he looked at me like crazy, like, "What are you talking about?" And then he's like, "No, man, you don't leave the lock rings on." And I was like, "Oh, some guys like to do it. I've actually heard foremen say, 'Nah, leave the lock rings on. I'd like to." Keep get it wrenched tight with the lock rings. And I don't really think there's anything saying you can't do it, but like there's a lot of listing things that kind of come into this. So what you have in the picture right there is you have a cast iron conduit body, and it has EMT connectors going into it. Those connectors are only listed, well, for one dry location. This is actually a wet location, but they're also only listed to be used with a lock ring into an enclosure. They're not listed to be threaded into anything. So those that conduit body there has NPT threads, and then the connectors in there are square threads. So that's actually a listing violation. The one right above it was hilarious. Like, it looks like they just stuffed a piece of 1/2-inch flex right into a 3/4 coupling.
Yep.
And it looked like they did the same thing up top. Took a 3/4 flex, or maybe 1 inch. I don't know. Couldn't really tell the sizes, but it looks like they did some hokey stuff up above. And then the funny thing was, you'll see later when we do our wall of shame pick, the actual hole pick. I was blown away. But yeah, like, to me personally, I could see some cases where you might want to like use a lock ring. Like, say if you have like a rigid and you have those rated lock rings to actually cinch it tight, to keep your conduit body from rotating or anything like that. So there's probably some uses that you could probably use it, but overall, in general, it's actually going to be a listing violation. And then a lot of times too, you got to watch out if you have the weather rated. We actually had the NPT style threads, the NPT threaded style, and they wouldn't work with the lock ring on there. It would just, the lock ring would smash up the gasket and everything. So you just couldn't use them with the lock ring. But some guys like to do it. So I kind of looked into it to see, and I really couldn't find anything that really said that you couldn't use a lock ring on like an NPT style with the correct threads. A lot of people were saying that there's no EMT connector that works, but there is now. They are coming out where MPT threads for EMT. And so I don't know if you did any research on it.
I did do some research, me, and I really couldn't find anything on it. I'd get into talking about the threads and where it'd be a listing violation there. When you had called me and you were telling me about this, I said, "This is actually a thing." And I said, let's think of it this way. You had an LB there, and if I took a piece of rigid and threads, everything match up, and I put that on there, threaded in there, do I need a lock ring? No, you don't need one. So if I use reasoning of deduction here. If I had an EMT connector, the threads match up, and I thread it in there, why would I need a lock ring when I don't need one for a piece of rigid, or even if it was IMC? Either one, if the threads match, the taper's right and everything, you're just threading into it. And if they say, well, it could come loose, whatever, well, that's why you strap on both sides of it.
Yeah, the funny part is that they use the lock ring and then they got the connector all, it's not even lined up, because that would be the only other reason I could see using a lock ring, was so you could kind of use it as like a jam nut and get that connector to where the screw's straight. But it's not even straight in that picture.
Yeah.
Dude, there was not many things right with this picture, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I just have never heard that to be a problem. And I mean, if I was out on the job and I saw that I had an LB there, and I'm taking, and I've got, you know, the taper threads match and everything, and if I had a set screw coupling put in there, I wouldn't have. Let me ask this question: what if I put a compression type?
So
Okay, it's the same. It's the same connectors. Just one is a set screw and one's compression. Do I still need a ring on it? I mean, I understand the arguments that people are trying to make, but that would definitely be flushed up against it. I wouldn't require a lock ring for that. I mean, as an instructor, I would not.
I almost think the lock ring would kind of be a bad thing if you were using the compression style, because they now have that gasket on them.
Yeah.
That goes in, so I don't know that I'd really want to risk like tearing up that gasket with the lock ring on the other side of it, or vice versa if you had the gasket on the other side. Like, I just don't see it. I don't understand why people do this. That was the whole reason I wanted to run this myth, was because you know, some guys think, oh well, it's part of the listed assembly. No, it's not. You know.
No, it isn't.
And then on top of that, you're using it in a way that it's not listed the way you're using it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of one thing I'm a little bit of a nerd on when it comes to like trying to get like the right parts and use them the right way and everything like that. So that was the whole reason I wanted to run this, and I thought when you saw this picture you're gonna have a good chuckle. And
oh yeah,
I don't think you'd be passing that over there in Grapevine.
No, I can already tell you I wouldn't have passed this. But, you know, just from an inspector viewpoint, because I was an inspector, also as a co-instructor, as an author, you know, I would look at this and I would say, no, lock rings are not required. I just, you know, if your taper threads and everything match up, you're good to go. So that would be my take on it. And I just don't believe the lock rings are required. I just don't.
I agree. So all the people that told me you have to put the lock rings on, you're busted. Myth busted.
Yeah, and